Say what I think or what
Yes.
I think middle school matters then?
What do you think?
Yeah, how to read a problem and figure out, so that they kind of figure out problem solving skills.
How to problem solve? Okay, what else?
Math literacy, which would be a part of like problem solving. It's just the biggest struggle on the test that we took yesterday is not the kids didn't know what to do to add fractions. They didn't know how to pull apart a problem because of literacy issues.
Okay, what else? Literacy, problem solving. I know what I know, what I think.
What's the question?
What does the students walk away with more than anything when they leave middle school going into algebra?
Conceptual understanding.
Conceptual understanding of what? Just everything?
Just how to use especially with algebra, there's a lot of different formulas and just knowing how to use them real well.
This is what I think.
Good academic habits.
Habits? Okay. This is what I think. I think they should know that math is about representations. You identify and go between representations, whether it be 5 or 5 items, whether it be an equation or a graph, whether it be a table or coordinates. It's very, very important because on assessments, the biggest thing moving into algebra is all about representations. Rodriguez is right here. She can tell you algebra, it's about representation, whether it be a line, an equation, verbal, a graph, table, whether you're defining displacement, you have to say, is it going away, forward, what's happening, is it constant? Representation. So I'm going to give you a system to where we can show representations using any kind of proportions, whether it be linear functions, whether it be quadratic functions, and you save paper. So I'm going to try to do 2 things today. Show you to save paper, where they take notes on their own paper. And the second thing is show you how to make a foldable. They can keep that representations on their folder. And you can replicate this, you can do it a I&M, a guided practice in group, and then an independent practice by themselves. Make sense? All right. So first thing is, we're going to give a scenario. Scenario is representation. So in 6th grade, what do you guys discuss in 6th grade? Representation. What do you guys discuss? Like, how can you represent blank, 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 blank?
Percents.
Percent, okay? And what ways can you represent percents?
Fraction.
Fractions, decimals, tin blocks, bars, number lines. Objects. Yeah.
Okay. 7th grade.
I'm good with 100% in 7th grade too, but, I mean, not necessarily the same,
Just helping me out.
yeah, proportions. I was gonna say proportions, like we did 11%, yeah.
Okay, how do you represent those?
Equations, yeah. Unit rate. Person, huh? Word, yeah.
Words. What else? Tables?
Tables, yeah. Yeah, and graphs.
Graphs. Equations, you can also use coordinates. 8th grade.
And we're doing slope intercept one.
Okay. Something new this year?
Yep.
Last year was basic portions. Okay? Different ways to represent.
Equation. Tables. Graphs. Coordinates. In word form.
Anything else?
I mean, it could be, if it is at y intercept, it could be proportions also, in unit rate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Algebra 1.
Can you use the same one?
You can.
Function.
I mean, it's pretty much the same now. I mean, functions, we have quadratics. You know, so quadratics as well. I mean, it's the same. We have functions, different types of functions. You can do functions.
Mappings.
Show representations. You could have function notation, effects, yeah, all kinds of things, okay? So students have to be able to know to go between these, and they have to go efficiently. It can't take all day to know that a fraction in decimals all mean percents. They can't take all day to say that, okay, I have this graph, but the line also is an equation. They have to be able to know quickly how these things interchange. And you would ask them, okay, so I can represent this table into what form? Oh, I'm going to coordinates, because it's two different things, input, output. That should be efficient, done efficiently. So this system here, I use this a lot when I would teach. I learned this from, I think it was, I learned this from a pre-AP conference, I think, like my first or second year of teaching. What you do is you take your paper, you're gonna fold it, and force. And so what you tell the students, they take their paper and you fold it and force. They do it. They're doing the work. I'm not doing this for them. Okay? If you want to have kids who maybe have some special needs, draw it out for them, but they can also fold the paper. If you want to do a little diagram or a little line, if they really can't draw straight, then do that. But for the rest of your kids, they can fold paper. Don't babysit them. So fold the paper, and then you're going to have four corners. Okay? And these four corners represent representations. When I first did this, I only had four corners. And I had basically the main things are verbal, so we speak. I had a graph, I had a table, and I had an equation. And then I adjusted and said, okay, we can change this. And I redid this to where we had coordinates in the middle. So it looked like this. Now, this is, I was looking at algebra. You can adjust this to make it fit whatever you're doing. Okay, representations. So it doesn't have to be just verbal, tables, graphs. It could be pictures, it could be symbols, whatever content you're teaching, they have to know multiple ways. Does that make sense? Okay, so if that makes sense, I want to ask Ms. Easton, how can I show percents using this four-corner method? What can I do? Different representations.
Well, I direct percents in the middle, and then you could do,
0%.
yeah. You could show in one corner what it would be like as a fraction. Maybe in the other corner as a decimal. You could show with objects, and then, you know, either base 10 or a number line or something like that. Just another representation.
Oh, vocabulary.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, doesn't that all, like, all those things, wouldn't that, like, build that vocabulary of that word
Could.
percent?
Good.
Well, I would, like, in the middle or somewhere, just put that percent means out of 100, because if they understand that it's out of 100, I think
You put
everybody.
definition here.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just getting you guys to think about showing multiple ways.
Yeah.
It's just a process of thinking about how do I show them multiple ways in one setting, and not just giving them graphs, but you gotta tie these things together in a classroom. You can't do it in isolation. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So that'd work, right? If you want the definition here, definition there. All right. So I want you to do this. I want you to take your paper and then draw the same thing. Make the line in the middle, make a diamond. Do that. Who's time do I have? And let's go to 7th grade. All right, so I'm just going to give, what are you covering right now?
We're finishing up proportions.
Proportions, right? So, a problem that you're working on, I think they did something yesterday where they had a project.
Mm-hmm.
They,
It was percents, like financial literacy.
Okay. so proportions, what would you put as your subheading? What would you do?
I would, so I was like with the word problem, and then I would show it, I would do like the word problem with, the words, and then I'd have a graph of it, a table, and then an equation for it.
Do you have a problem, an example of a problem you can give us? So what I'm doing now is I'm gonna do this as I am. I'm guiding you through the process, all right? Guiding you through. This is not the first time they've seen this. This is kind of a combination. So they've seen these things, now I'm putting it together. So I have a word problem. One going to take, if I want to focus on one of them, let's say I want to teach how to do an equation. They know word, they know table, and then I'll probably go to equation and then go into the graph form. Does that make sense? Now, on the combination, I want to check all of them.
Are they picking what to write, or are you
You're
telling
giving them what to write.
Okay.
You're giving them, you'll give them one or the other. So I usually give them a word problem, have them from the word problem, go into a table, go into an equation, and then create the graph.
So is it like number 5?
We'll keep it simple. We'll just do this.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
A machine can make 2 robots per 3 hours. Okay. So that'd be kind of the problem itself, right? Kind of the situation. If we're able to take the situation, then we can either make the table first, or we make the equation and decide if they want to do it. So to do this, you have to understand how to make an equation from a word problem. So I want you guys to do this now. Create the equation that represents this. That's that relationship.
Get on here.
So 2 robots per 3 hours. All H hours are robots. So I'm going to talk out loud. You should see scholars defining what the variables are first. What does R stand for? What is robots? What is hours? And so these are all things they're doing. Define the variables first. Got to define them.
Well, there's 3 of them.
You get the equation yet? Once you get the equation, I then want you to go create the table.
Mr. Kraken.
You would graph. And when you graph, they must label the graph. It may be good to actually give them a graph and have them tape it on there. It's hard to draw, so sometimes coaches give them the, if you're doing just the quadrant 1, if you're doing 8th grade and 7th grade, you may give them the whole all 4 quadrants, functional negatives.
You guys pre-print a graph on this one.
You could do that, or you could just give them the graph and then have them tape it on there. And then as you progress, you have them start sketching it. Sketch the graph. Because again, that's going to be an outward concept. That would sketch graphs. So when they're making the graph, if you want to focus just on the graph piece, again, you're looking at labeling, you're looking at putting down the units, the intervals. These are all key skills they have to have, and they gotta know that they go together. They can't just think about this stuff in isolation. They have to know this all goes together. All right, so I have 11 minutes. So when you look at this kind of activity, what comes to mind when you work on this, when you do this problem, what comes to mind? And again, you're a scholar. As a scholar, what's coming to mind when you're working? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? If you're the teacher, saying, okay, this works well, this works great, I'm not struggling with this, I've got issues with this, what are you thinking about?
I think they're making connections when they're doing this kind of stuff. So are you saying that kids already know how to do all of these things? No, or
Yes and no,
modeling?
it depends.
Okay.
It depends on how much you want to get in depth. Like, what I would use this as sometimes to teach a new concept. I may use this to teach painting equations. And I wouldn't pay too much to the table and the graph. Or I may use this as a culmination activity to review proportions, what they mean as a whole. That makes sense?
Right.
So if they know how to create, the word problem and find different table items, different coordinates, they can do this and it's pretty simple, okay? And they can then plot the points. So they focus on just taking the equation. How do you make the equation from the words or the table or the graph? Focus on this, they're doing all of this. Once they get that together, I'm gonna give them one problem and say, now you're gonna model very quickly and have them do their own problem and do this whole thing by themselves, or either in a pair.
Okay.
And then they should show me how everything connects.
So, I'm just asking because I have a lesson coming up like later this week that this would work well with, and I have to teach scaling, graphing, like, it's like very basic, so scaling, graphing, and then just a table. And I was wondering if like make this my INM, take one problem, do all through with that, and then maybe for GP or something, they do the same thing.
So I put them in pairs in the GP. If it's new material, you want to make sure you go step by step you hit every
Exactly.
single skill. Maybe you have like a notes on the side for steps or process. So like going from word to verbal equation, what does that look like? What do you do? You're going from the equation over to table. So they have those steps to follow, and they can just apply it and guide practice, and then do it again in their INM.
Should we chunk that, like I do one and then they do one, or should we just make this whole thing together and then they make it?
I would chunk it, but then I would pause, ask questions, and then say, okay, now we're gonna go to here. Now do this, pause, ask questions, then go to here.
Okay,
Pause, ask
and then they
questions,
can do
right.
one.
And then, yeah. Any other comments, thoughts? Dr.
The table. Suppose you have students that can do everything, but they get down to the arithmetic. How do you handle that?
Some of the lower kids.
The struggling.
Struggling kids. For that, you may have to pair them up with someone and just kind of go slow with them. Or you start off, you can scaffold the problems. Maybe give them have different tiers. Maybe have, for the kids who struggle with arithmetic, give them some basic numbers. Using 1s, 2s, and 3s. Maybe it's triple, double, maybe not a fraction. And then some of the higher scholars, you give them fractions and decimals to work with.
No technology. Eighth graders.
I would say for this, I mean,
The
I'm not gonna
numbers,
say no, but the idea is the process.
yeah.
Right. And if maybe the kids who are struggling need to have faculty to help them out to,
Yeah, like 3 halves and, you know, what was the other one? Was it 8 or 7 halves and, 15
right.
halves? And then, scaling the graph, you know.
This one give intervals?
Scale it by ones or twos.
Those are things you have to, kind of talk them through and say, what should we do for a graph? So as you're doing that first IN, you're asking them, how do we do our intervals? Should we do by 5, by 1s, by 2s, by halves? So then when they make their graph, they're asking themselves the same questions. That make it by, and you ask them, why did you choose to do by 5s? Well, look at your table. How are the coordinates? Are they counted by 5s, by 10s? Are they all going small by 2s and 3s? So what you doing here? Hold it by 1s. And then you make them equal adjustments. But I'm not, once you go to that GP, I'm not giving them answers, I'm asking them questions. Why did you do this? What makes sense for you? Cool. So, any questions? Okay. What would be your hiccups in class, do you think?
I think I tend to want to like dive into every little nitty gritty, and so like pacing wise, and then especially because it'll be like one of the first times where they're working without guided notes, so you know like some scholars in particular, I have to like stay on them the whole time, like take your notes, like keep writing whatever I'm putting on the board, you put on your paper too. So I mean,
And that's your job as a teacher.
yeah, exactly. But those are the only like small things.
So the key is, I mean, they're making this thing interesting for them.
Mhm.
They're not taking, you want to give them colored pencils, give them colored pencils. You know, it's cool, give them colored pencils or colored pens, whatever. But the idea is, all right guys, let's do something fun today. Oh, we're gonna make a little picture. You know, make it, it's not just taking notes. We're gonna have a new note-taking form today. You know, make it a little engaging for them. And then they can save this, make it look pretty, and you can post it when they do their independent practice. And you do the exemplar ones and post them on the wall, and you have representations. And these are now like classroom notes on the wall. And they can see that we have words, coordinates, the graph, table, all in the same form.
In their own writing, in their
Their
writing.
own writing, yep, this is their own stuff. When you get to algebra, you're looking at, let's say, quadratics, and you know, you want to show maybe an equation or a work problem that talks about acceleration or trajectory, whatever. You can have that there. You can create the equation from the words or the table, and then you graph it, and same process. Percents, proportions, it works very well with because it's all representations. You can even create these as fractions. You can take this table box and also take them and put them as fractions and say, is it a proportion? How do you know? And so you have the 3 halves, whatever it is, I don't know what that, 3 halves, the 6/4, and you can ask them questions and say, okay, are these in proportion? How do you know? You can look at the table. These are all things you can do from the same paper. Okay, I'm saying be efficient. Don't have to have 5,000 sheets of writing notes. Don't need that. Take this graph right here and ask them, it is proportion, how do you know? It should say straight line, goes to the origin. Why? Because da-da-da. And then you can take these coordinates, okay, are you sure? Take the coordinates. Put them in fractions. How do you check this? Cross multiply and divide, or reduce. Same problem, all different concepts, on one piece of paper. Does that make sense? Okay. And you have your coordinates here, or your definition. Okay. And the last thing, the question was, what if I want to focus on 1? You give them 2, and maybe have them just do 1. Or give them 3, and have them do 2. If you want to focus on just 1 piece, or 2 pieces. Make sense?
If you wanted to just, you were working on maybe percent proportions, but you wanted to just give them a couple of different examples of more forms, you could just like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. These are easy, coordinates are easy, so you should always have the coordinates on there, because the guys used to between coordinates, X, Y, input, output, you're used to that. Any questions, y'all? Good? Okay. All right. And the last thing, and I'm done. I would like to see vocabulary being very taught explicitly. I want to see the content vocabulary. If you want to use those little acronyms and the things you guys do to make kids relate and understand, that's great. But they need to understand the real vocabulary, okay? So if you're looking at your weekly lesson and you're going to focus on these words that high impact, put them on the board. Some is in the wall. I mean, the word wall is great, but make it you want to use. You're going to use 5 major words for that week and put those 5 words up for that week and rep those 5 words all week long. Does that make sense? They should be able to know those words and see them. ELLs need to be able to see those words. It just means English. You need to be able to see those words. So put those words on the board, and just as you're teaching, you say, okay, so what are we talking about today, guys? Talking about what's the key word? If they're going to look, they don't know the stuff yet. So let them look. And then you can reference it and get used to seeing it over and over again. But using that back in the vocabulary. So I'm going to come to classrooms. Rodriguez, I think Lynn did it very well. She does it now. Puts their vocab list on the board on the side so the kids can reference those words. All right, that is my time. I have 1 minute and 50 seconds. Any questions? Comments? How's my time today?
It's nice.
Is it new?
It's not something.
We just wanna.
Do you like tying shorter ties? Something I've noticed, like shorter ties. Sometimes.
Not sometimes. Just I wake up, rushing and
Everyone was thinking that. No.
it is a new style though.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking, like, are you making it fashion?
Yeah,
Wait, really? People wear those?
it's a new style. Yeah. Go to black churches.
I'll try it out. I'll try it out.
All kind of stuff.
It's getting back to equations. We'll show you. Stop
Today.
That'll just
You
be.
play any lessons? You play any lessons?
Like, for instance,
Good, good. Show me what you're doing.
Did they copy well?
They
copy pretty well. Yeah.
The second half.
It's just the lazy kids. Or just
Yeah, so
that one copy.
that's where you have to
They
do
can
really struggle, hit things up. It's good to have a step
But
struggle.
what I did is I had
Yeah,
them
that's
like.
what, well, I do the same method, but printing off paper, and I like have like a box, literally a box, and I usually do,
That's a major issue.
I am up here,
Because often they're not.
like I am,
We made
one
that
example,
same
but then I go
Lady
table.
Nurtures.
I make a
It's a
table
project
here,
and I work some things that they have table.
Right, right.
and then on the back, they have equations, so like, one example is like.
Right. It's the same thing. This is just a way to do it. It saves paper and they are tricky. So they can actually now take this thing, this visual they can take and apply to anything. It's a way to frame their thinking.
What period is that algorithm? Period is that algorithm?
2 through 4.
That's good.
I might stop by this Princess teaching a little bit. Which room are you in? Fifth grade.
Crossroads.
Are you teaching point selection?
Yes. Very clever, so.
Okay. That was slow for you. You're only there just one day.